Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the latest of PwC's LinkedIn Live events. This event today, we're going to be going through PwC's latest festive predictions for the retail sector and for consumers over the Christmas period. My name's Kian Tan. I'm Senior Retail Advisor to PwC here in the UK, and I'll be joined by Lisa Hooker, who's the Leader of Industry for the Consumer Markets Industries, and Jacqueline Windsor, who is our Head of Retail in the UK. And you'll hear from them shortly. Just a bit of housekeeping for you. You'll have joined from the LinkedIn page. Hopefully you can see that page. If you've got any questions for us anyway through the event, please feel free to drop them in the comments. And Nick, who's watching with us, will be passing those questions to us, and hopefully I can answer them at the end. We can answer them at the end, or we'll follow up with you later. There'll also be a recording of this on our PwC's YouTube page, so do listen in afterwards if you can't make the whole event. I know some of you may be on your way to work or battling through strikes or something else. And there'll also be a link to the report on the YouTube page and on the LinkedIn page as well. And do follow myself, Lisa, and Jack, and we'll always put all of our latest research on there too. All right, let's get to the questions. You'll have seen maybe some of the reporting in the Times or in Bloomberg that PwC launched our reports yesterday. And our headline prediction is that spending by consumers on presents and festivities, on celebrations over the Christmas period this year is going to be down by 13%. That's £3 billion. So from 23 billion last year to 20 billion or thereabouts this year. We're going to dig into that. We're going to work through what happened to retail this year, what we think is going to happen over Christmas, and our outlook for the year ahead. So let me start with Lisa Hooker, who's our Leader of Industry for Consumer Markets. Lisa, have you done your shopping yet?
Oh, Ken, I'm one of those annoying people that start really early, and I'm largely done, including doing a lot of wrapping last weekend with a nice glass of mulled wine. So people who know me know I am really organised, but I also love Christmas, and I love starting shopping early so I can get really excited.
Well, Lisa, I think I'm the exact opposite. So you're making me a little bit stressed. I haven't bought exactly zero.
You might be on. You need to mute one of your machines, or you're just echoing. Try again.
Jack Windsor.
Hi, can you hear me all?
Yeah, we can hear you now. So, Jack, are you an early Christmas shopper or a late Christmas shopper?
I think I'm bucking both Lisa's and the consumer trends, and that I've bought exactly zero presents this year, but spent Black Friday buying for myself. However, I do have my tree up.
So let me tell you what consumers told us. In our consumer sentiment survey back in September, 20% of people had already started shopping by mid-September this year. And this is a trend that we definitely have seen, which is part of the cost of living crisis that we see. The number one reason for people starting to shop earlier is because of budgeting. So as Lisa has said, Christmas is a really super special occasion. And we've already seen, particularly from grocery retailers and food retailers, people starting to buy mince pies and Christmas puddings to make sure that their day is special. However, the majority of people are more like Jack. So the majority of people do their shopping in December. And the most organised people, Lisa is a Londoner or in Scotland or Northern Ireland, where the most organised people do their shopping sort of a little bit earlier or during the Black Friday period. Did you get some bargains on Black Friday, Lisa?
I did. I actually, people talk about whether there's some good offers. And I say, look, you can never guarantee that things won't go into a deeper sale if they're not sold around Christmas or in the January sales. But I actually got some really good offers particularly around beauty. I thought there was lots of offers and lots of sort of good innovation.
Yesterday's BRC data also said that beauty was one of the surprise winners, one of the winners during the November period in a period where Black Friday seemed to be a little bit more muted. And that reflected our survey.
Yeah, I think absolutely right. I mean, it's really interesting. I think every year there's a thing about, is Black Friday losing interest for our consumer, or are they still interested? And last year we were very much sustained interest in it, particularly the under 25s and men. But this year it definitely wasn't as interesting for people. And we saw a real drop off in the level of interest from 61% last year to 44% this year, which actually, if you do the math, it implies like over a 20% reduction in spend. Now, it's you mentioned the BRC. We were having some debates and bets, Ken, weren't we, with some of our fellow commentators on the retail market on whether Black Friday will be up or down. I said the thing is we can never really prove it because it's Black November, not really just at the Black Friday weekend. But actually, the early indicators, you say, from BRC is that non-food sales were down in November. So it does look like there was less interest.
But there was a bit of a channel shift from online to stores. So some high streets were busier, and some of the sort of the more attractive local high streets and shopping centres did report sort of more anecdotally that they'd done well.
Yeah. And on the positive, one of the reasons shoppers told us they want to spend less is because they want to budget and spend the money on Christmas.
On Christmas and on food, because grocery did well, of course, which was one bright spot and continues to be a bright spot despite the inflation that's in the grocery market. That contrasts, I think, quite a bit to Black Friday in the US. Jack, you were in the US over the Thanksgiving holidays.
Indeed. I was in California.
Tell us about Black Friday in the US.
So I think it really feels like a different phenomenon in the US, I think for a number of reasons. I think first off, Thanksgiving, which falls on the third Thursday in November, is a bank holiday. So people tend to take it a long weekend. Second, I think UK consumers are less off relatively than the US, given some of the inflationary pressures. And finally, US, of course, is home to big box retailing, which really invested in celebrating the different events and really driving a lot of promotions.
So it's much more of a physical event in the US, whereas the UK, even though there was a bit of a shift back into stores, 3/4 of spend is, according to our survey, is online over the Black Friday period in terms of buying products, non-food products.
That's right. It really felt like a store-based event, as with previous years.
Okay. So the run-up to Christmas has been relatively muted. If you look at the ONS reports on retail sales, the BRC report that was out yesterday, they all seemed a little bit disappointing. Now, the question is, what does that mean for Christmas? Lisa, you've seen the PwC survey results, 3 billion less in spend. What do you think to that? Do you think that consumers will spend less, or will they do better than that?
I keep saying to people, it's really finely balanced out there. We still have got some pressures. Although inflation's coming down, it's still just under 5% in October, and there is the lag impact of interest rates on mortgages and rent. And the job market, whilst employment is holding well, there's still a little less certainty in terms of the job market. So there are some negatives, but there's positives because inflation is coming down and consumer sentiment's holding up. And even though the job market outlook is weakening, employment levels are strong. So it's a hard one to judge, but I am cautiously optimistic. And the reason I am is for a few reasons. Is last year people said they would spend less and they didn't. They spent more. Albeit I do appreciate it was the first normal Christmas post-COVID. But across the year, consumers tell us we are really focusing on the special events and want to spend time with our family and friends and make it special. So I do think that people will spend a little more than they think, and it might not see growth, but I am confident that the decline won't be as bad as people think.
And it's interesting because if you look at last year's survey that PwC ran before Christmas, people said they'd spend £20 billion, which is exactly the same as they said before Christmas this year. But in the eventuality, they ended up spending 23 billion. So they overspent by something like 15%, albeit a normal Christmas being a normal Christmas event, and seeing friends and family for the first time, perhaps in 3 years at that time. And you won't get that effect this year.
No, you won't get the effect of the increase from people wanting to get back together, because it's always quite funny is when you see people, you are more generous and you buy better food. So you won't get that pickup from that, but people want to still celebrate in the same way as last year, which gives me confidence that it may not go down.
Okay, so Jack, now that you've heard the big picture numbers from Lisa, who do you think will be the winners and losers? Which categories will win and lose? I mean, we've already talked about food, but some home and electricals have already talked about having quite a tough.
Yeah, I think broadly, net spending intentions across all categories are down versus last year. But in terms of what is relatively protected and what is not, I think we're seeing the focus on food, as you rightly said, whether it's Christmas dinner, food and drink over the longer holiday season, and of course, fashion to celebrate the festive occasion. And that really will be at the expense, or so they say, for home, electricals, as well as leisure. I think you need to recognize there'll be some nuances, of course, by age, where the younger generations are buying earlier, buying more fashion, buying more health and beauty, whereas the older generations will be the trends that we have talked about.
And what about so our colleagues from the travel team talk about leisure and holidays. Do you think people will be going away more, or spending on holidays and protecting spend for that?
It isn't as, I guess, the uplift isn't as high as we've seen in previous years where COVID was unwinding. So it won't get the same bump effect. But people, well, the UK consumer does like to protect their holidays. The way they cope with their wallets will just a little bit different this year.
I thought what was interesting is that in our survey, we also asked why people are spending Christmas.
That's right. And those trends actually are still in terms of, spending time with friends and family and the proportion of who's doing that is
They're going to need presents to take away.
That's right.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting again with, like restaurant spending has actually been quite subdued this year, and people have been trading down maybe into home delivery or to some of the offers that the grocers do. But I actually think, subject to train strikes, which we had last year, everyone's saying that Christmas bookings are up, which again comes back to the people prioritizing special occasions and fun and time with friends and family.
And also remember last year, as a comparison to last year, we also had postal strikes last year, which caused all the delivery companies problems. So it might be a smoother year for online retailers, despite the trend towards coming back into stores, which we saw over Black Friday and in fact throughout this year. So it might be a bit better. December is when people say they're doing most of their shopping. So according to our survey numbers, something like 55% of people say they're doing most of their Christmas present shopping in this month of December. And in fact, you've got something like 7% of people doing it in the week before Christmas, and they're mostly men, by the way. So I haven't started my shopping yet. The timing of Christmas, Lisa, the timing of Christmas being on a Monday, do you think that's going to help retailers?
Well, we have got 19 shopping days to Christmas, just to scare everybody who isn't quite as organised. So you do need to get out there and get spending. The interesting thing, when it's on a Monday, you do actually find that shopping the week before is stronger because you've got the whole week and you've got the Saturday. The Sunday is leaving it a bit late, but I think you're going to have quite a busy week up to that Saturday. So I think this year, when we're calling how much people have spent, it will go to the wire, and it will be very balanced, whether it's festive spirit or humbug.
And Sundays are normally quite tricky because there's only the 6 trading hours, but I noticed already M&S has already said that they're going to have longer trading hours in the week before Christmas, so right up from 6 a.m. to midnight in some stores. So it will be interesting to see what happens. And do you think there'll be good bargains in the sales as well?
Trading has been actually, I think trading over the year has been more resilient. I mean, if you look at ONS, it's about 6% sales growth on average across each month, although volume's down because of inflation. So, trading has been probably more resilient than people think. But I think pre and post COVID, our retail sector's got far better at managing their stock levels, and our data suggests that promotional activities are not that different at the moment year on year. So I think a lot of retailers will follow a similar promotional pattern to prior years. The areas that you've talked about where people have been pulling back, some of the big ticket areas, and even some of the online only retailers, I think they could be in a situation where they do need to discount to clear some of their stock across the end of the year and into next year.
And I don't know if you saw the report a week or so ago about online traffic in the during the Black Friday period, online traffic for many of our most popular retailers was down quite considerably. But both online specialist retailers and multi-channel retailers, in fact, the only winners were sort of odd Chinese retailers like Temu and those kinds of retailers. They were the ones that tended to be winning. So do you think there'll be good online sales instead after Christmas?
Yeah, I do think there will be some online only retailers where they are trying to clear through stock. And I think you've seen some of that activity across the year where there's been more than normal sales activities and sales days and deeper discounts to try and clear the excess stock. We all came into COVID, didn't we? When online before COVID was less than 20%, peaked at 36. There's quite a lot of people thought it would stay at that level. Now back to like 26%. So it's actually at the same trend line it would have been if COVID never happened. And I don't think some of our online only retailers really actually expected that, or the market itself expected that. So I think they've had to sort of rebase their thinking.
And the fact that online retailers have started to open shops and pop-up shops, and that's almost an acknowledgement in a way that multi-channel might be, or omni-channel might be the way ahead.
Yeah.
So I mean, to summarize, it sounds like although our headline numbers are that consumers will spend 13% less over the Christmas period, actually it might be it's going to come down to the wire, which is what Lisa said. Different categories will do differently. So as Jack said, food and grocery will do well. Fashion, maybe if for events and for young people. But there may be a bit more challenges ahead for big ticket home and electricals, which to be fair had a very good pandemic. So Christmas down to the wire. What about looking ahead? Jack, you've got your crystal ball in front of you. And you always like telling us that, what are your big things on the minds of retailers in the longer distant future?
Yeah, so as we head into 24 and beyond, I think there are a number of things to be mindful of. I think first is capitalizing on changes in consumer behavior, what and how they buy, focus on things around wider well-being, as an example, or more experiential retail. I think second is integrating emerging technologies. There's a lot of chat about generative AI and how does that enhance the customer experience or indeed drive efficiencies in the back office. And of course, with COP28 kicking off in Dubai, how to be a more responsible business. So what you must do clearly with upcoming regulation, what you should do for consumer expectations, not necessarily because they're going to pay for it. And of course, what you could do to differentiate your retail model.
Do you think those things will affect how we spend over the Christmas period? So AI.
I think that's the big question, because I think consumers don't necessarily pay a premium for those innovations, but they will punish you if you don't. So I think the question for retailers, particularly in a tough trading environment, is how do you self-fund some of those innovations? So in effect, taking out bad costs and reallocating it to good costs.
Yeah.
But all the quick wins are done, right?
Not necessarily. If you ask our wider colleagues at the firm, I think there's always something to go for. I think there is less about the big move. I think it's an aggregate of some incremental moves to move the dial.
And Kian, picking up on ESG, do you remember when we've done the surveys and you say to people, there's a genuine concern, particularly on the younger generations, around ESG. But when you then refine the question is, would you give up functionality or price or pay more, then actually there's not that difference between the age groups.
And in fact, the one thing I would add to that is the survey also said that people's definition of ESG, which is definitely a win for British retailers over some international ones, is that it's around how you treat your staff and how you treat your people. So then consumers tend to be much more concerned about responsibility to your staff and the supply chain and sort of who makes their trainers, rather than purely some of the environmental aspects. So that's sort of longer term ahead, and you're saying it won't necessarily affect how people spend over Christmas. I guess shorter term, Lisa, what do you think trading will look like? What will January look like for the retail sector in the short term?
Well, we are heading into slow or minimal growth, not just in the UK, but globally. And there's an argument whether we may or may not dip into recession in the UK and across Europe. So that means actually cash is going to be tight. So you really have to fight for share of wallet and stomach. And it also means the year's going to be quite unpredictable. So I think what that means is, you're going to have to really keep close to your customer to really understand their wants and needs. And I think for me, that means you've really got to harness their data, not just to better understand how they want to engage and what innovation they want, but also so you can monetize data. You see sort of, some of the retailers really look into how they can monetize the data with the consumer goods companies. And we have this amazing frictionless futures experience in Manchester, which really brings to life how you manage data and technology. The other couple of things I would say is with the unpredictability, I do think you have to get closer to your suppliers and collaborate more with what maybe traditionally has been your competitors. And I think we've talked about ESG and AI, but I think it will really start to accelerate in terms of impact across 24.
And do you think, so this time last year, you talked about consumers having a credit card hangover because they spent more than they expected for Christmas 2022. Do you think that hangover will happen this year?
It's really interesting because I thought January and the first quarter was going to be much tougher than it was. Growth was, the ONS growth was around this 6% mark across the year. And I thought it might even go negative in January, just even though we did have inflation. So I think there was probably more COVID savings than I thought about. Now, given that's gone and we have got some inflationary impact still coming through, I think January could be a little bit tougher than we saw last year.
So because people are running out. So, I think the other thing I would add, and I think it's worth, if anybody's listening, to look up our consumer sentiment survey, because I think it will vary significantly across demographic groups. So more affluent people will still have some COVID savings. They're prioritizing their holidays. They're not even trading down in some cases amongst the more affluent groups and older groups. Whereas some younger people, particularly families, are finding it harder, and there will be more mortgage renewals. So even if interest rates have peaked, as Lisa talked right at the beginning, mortgage renewals, rent renewals, those are all starting to happen now, which means that there's simply going to be less money to spend. So it's going to be a tough year. There might well be some giveaways in the next budget if it's election year. There were a few giveaways already, though.
Yeah, and also the other one to remember is what we call the grey pound is strong. Not, they often don't have mortgages, are getting interest on their savings, and obviously with the triple lock and the inflation pension increase, I think the older demographics are an interesting place for people to be dealing with. And I always laugh because they tell us now they want to spend their money and not necessarily leave it to the next generation.
So, in summary, it sounds like there are some long-term things that retailers need to be concentrating on. So AI, ESG, and the non-negotiables around things that they have to do. But in the short term, it's around understanding customers better, collaborating potentially, and also treating customers differently. There are different demographic groups, different customer segments. I know that's one of your big topics, Jack, is treating customer segments differently and adapting the proposition to suit them. I think this is a good time to plug our retail briefing. So if you do want to know who the winners and losers of retail are come the new year, on the 23rd of January, Lisa, Jack and I will be joined by one or two of our other retail experts. Our chief political advisor, Gavin Barwell, will be talking about the year ahead, and we'll be running through how retailers did over Christmas, what consumers are telling us that they plan to do and where they plan to spend over the coming year. So do join us on 23rd of January. The details will all be on the LinkedIn page, or follow Jack, Lisa, or myself, and we will share those details. Any questions or anything like that? Pop them in the LinkedIn chat. Otherwise, I guess my main question to you, just out of time, is what are you looking forward to this Christmas? Jack, what are you looking forward to over the festive period? Are you going to take some time off? Are you going to be one of the 20% of Londoners who travel?
I have indeed, mostly because I've got family around the world, so hoping to spend it in the mountains.
And any Christmas gifts? Are you going to do your Christmas shopping on the day before Christmas?
Well, most certainly. But what I'm hoping to get under the tree is some of the innovations in well-being, particularly on beauty devices, given some of the new product developments out there. So that's what I want under my tree, Lisa, FYI.
And beauty continues to be one of the outperforming segments in our both health and beauty, in both senses of the term. Are one of the outperforming segments in our category prioritization. It's been quietly jumping up the charts, particularly amongst young people. Lisa, are you buying health and beauty this year?
Actually, I think I bought my health and beauty in Black Friday, so I think I'm quite well stocked up. I mean, for me, the other day I saw this really quite nice bracelet, and Jack and I talk about it. It's not the price of the bracelet, it's the price per wear. And when you look at the price per wear, because it's an everyday bracelet, then I think it's actually very good value. So I will be doing a bit of hinting to my husband over the next couple of weeks.
So he's the one of the 1 in 10 men who buys in the week before Christmas.
Oh yes. The only thing is, I say to him, don't panic buy, please, because often when you panic buy for somebody, maybe not the best present.
Well, thank you everyone for joining this LinkedIn, the latest PwC LinkedIn Live. Thank you to Lisa and Jack for sharing their thoughts. We've run through the findings of our report very, very quickly, so you will find the link, and I'll pop it onto the LinkedIn Live page. I'll also pop the link for the retail briefing in January. If you're in Manchester, you can join us live as well in person on 30th of January. And feel free to drop us questions or follow us on LinkedIn or on Twitter. Yeah. Thank you all.
Kian, just thank you to you. I know you've got a cough and you've just finished running a gym class, so there was a little bit of noise in your background, but well done for making it.
Thanks all.
Thanks all.
Bye.